Hey up and welcome to the Temple of Blair. This is a conversation with Frank Helmink. Now, this was recorded like back in November, so this has just taken me fucking ages to get round to editing. Frank works at Buma Culture. Now, Buma Culture isn't what it sounds like. It's Bumacutwr. And it's effectively the Performing Rights Society equivalent of the Netherlands. So if you're familiar with that, you know, that's helpful. But Frank's history is in music television, which is where the Roadrunner interest comes in as a metalhead. So check this out for a unique perspective on Roadrunner from the eyes of a music television professional. 1, 2, fuck shit up. Television broadcasting as an entity anyway is something I'm not overly familiar with. I usually prep like 10, 15 questions, but I thought because I don't know this world, I thought let's just meander through it and let's not, because I know you've got a relationship with the label and you have a reverence for it, and it's in a sense that when I said I was doing the documentary, you said, you're thinking of something similar. So obviously you will be on the same wavelength. So let's just wander through, I think, in a low stakes capacity. So
no problem.
When did you realize that Roadrunner was a thing? How did it first come across your desk?
I think it even started before I started working. So when I was just sitting around in my hometown, smoking spliffs and listening to metal, you kind of found out that the Roadrunner thing on the side of the CD was happening. So you this image thing started with everybody somewhere in the beginning of the 90s, end of the 80s, I think even. And for TMF, it was the quickest win for me, because I started to do a metal show over there. That's the only thing I started with, and then I ended up to be the program director of the whole TV station. But for the metal show, it was pretty easy to look up the guys you have to be in contact with. So it started with Roadrunner, then a long time nothing, and then you got the Somber Rough Trade and Nuclear Blast and all the stuff, which was a little bit more difficult because some of them didn't even have guys in Holland to work for them. But Roadrunner was it was an easy catch, because those guys were also looking for a place to put their metal on. There was nothing at all in Holland. The only thing they had was MTV, but MTV was just broadcasted from the UK, so they didn't have any influence on whatsoever. And the fun thing is that the program I started on had already started 2 months before that, but they were just showing Bon Jovi, Guns N' Roses, and all the stuff. It was called Wet and Wild as well, which is kind of like a horrible story. Horrible name for a metal show, but okay. And the guy hosting it, he doesn't even know any metal band at all. Sure. But it was fun. It was fun, and then Roadrunner was a big help, because they invested also in camera crews going to festivals, etc.
I was going to ask about this. So the big example I always refer to is Dynamo 95, and you mentioned that Roadrunner paid for the production arm of that. Was that typical of labels of the time, or was that?
I don't know if it did 95. 95 was even better, because Andre from Dynamo, he just came over to TMF. We had a conversation. He said, "Well, I have all these tapes. Can you do something with it?"
Okay.
I broadcasted it completely. But then from 96, we decided to really go to all those festivals and do some interviews and all the stuff. And then Roadrunner suggested, well, because I didn't have any money to spend on this TV show, because I mean, it was 10, 15, 20,000 people watching, that's it. So it was about everybody that was metal in Holland was watching the show. So we didn't really have money. We had a discussion at TMF about using cameras. I mean, there was half of the people wanted us to use like the really big professional cameras, and I wanted to use all those new stuff that was around back then, all those DV cams and all this stuff. And in the end, we ended up using them for almost every alternative show. But in the beginning, we weren't allowed to, so we had to do some investments. I mean, it was about 3, 4, 5,000 a festival, so it wasn't really a lot of money, but we didn't have the money, so Roadrunner paid a shitload of it and made it a lot easier for us to do all these interviews and all this stuff. And there was the time that at Dynamo Open Air, I think 25% of the bands performing were on the Roadrunner roster.
Yeah. So was it typical for a label to try and have so much input into the promotion arm? Because also they benefit from that, didn't they? Because
they do, and it's, I mean, all the major labels did exactly the same,
right?
Okay. In that way, that they didn't really pay for the camera crew most of the times, but they send us to whatever kind of a city in the States to do an interview with Mariah Carey or whoever.
Right.
That was also paid completely. So all the flight tickets, the dinners, the hotels, the camera crew was already over there.
I think it's like there's a territorial specificity to that activity as well, because when Kay signs off on TMF having some sort of production budget to film interviews with Roadrunner acts or whatever, a TV show or any capacity, I wonder if at this point he understood that there's 20,000 metalheads in Holland and there's no more.
Yeah.
Because that's the challenge, right? You can only pour so much money and expect a return on that kind of promotional investment.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, they sold about 25, 30,000 copies of the Machine Head album, for example. So there is the potential amount of people buying CDs was kind of big back then. And what they also did was using all the stuff, of course, all the success those bands had in Holland was also usable for PR purposes in all the other countries.
Oh, I suppose, yeah. So if you can, once you nail a territory, you can then go to Germany and say this band is huge in Holland. Maybe
there was a time Holland was seen as a breakthrough country, which it isn't anymore for a long time already. But
can you unpack that a little bit? I'm just curious because I always think of Case's background because he obviously worked for Polygram, and there was an era, especially in the disco era, where everything seemed to happen in Hilversum.
Yep.
Was everyone located there? Was this a tax benefit?
I don't know. I really don't know, because right now Universal Music is going to the stock market as well, and they also started in Holland. They picked out Holland and I don't know if this is a tax thing. I hope it is, because I wouldn't know why you should live in Hilversum for doing your job. But I don't know. If I take metal, for instance, sometimes there are Dutch bands, which is also true for all these electronic dance music, that are first. With Infantation was one of the first to really have a breakthrough in female-fronted metal.
Yeah.
And I don't know, sometimes it's the producer, sometimes it's just the studio, the Wisseloord in Hilversum, which is used by the Police and all the bands. And I don't even know. I don't think the Police were on Polydor whatsoever. I think they were EMI then. But I don't really. It's kind of funny because right now it's all about electronic dance music that is really big in outside of Holland. And if you look at the export, the amount of money that is being earned with exporting music, I think 75 to 80% is electronic music.
Right.
And that's the same. If it's successful worldwide, you will see all those countries trying to connect to all these successful producers and do collabs on whatever kind of a song.
Different market though, isn't it?
Yeah. And I don't know what happened in the 80s or 90s. I mean, I was too young to even notice whatever was happening. But I think what Case did was a good thing. He took the major company kind of working to a niche record label.
Yeah.
Back then, and it worked because he was lucky that I got to work on TMF as a metal fan. Because if I wouldn't have been there, nobody would have said, well, let's do the Machine Head interview.
Yeah, sure.
Wouldn't
Sure.
have known it. So it's a matter of luck, and then knowing who to call, because there was always one guy or girl working on the public radio station, the big one for the pop music,
Yeah.
working on metal. So there were like one or two or three places you could just release all this metal music, and then if you were lucky enough to meet people that really intended to try to make as many people love this kind of music, so like being almost being a Christian trying to convince you of believing in God. It was a lucky, it was, I don't know, it might have been a luckier thing than we think.
Yeah, I mean,
as far as timing is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think the activity in itself of like cases going, that it's so strange to think of it in this way, because we as metalheads assume metal has been around for a billion years. So it's inconceivable to us to think, actually, there's not a lot of like promotional circulation going around, or not as much as there could be. And Case is probably thinking, look, this is outlier music. It's a relatively emerging scene, especially in the 80s.
Yeah.
There's not the same kind of press as you would for as you'd have for, say, pop artists and things like that. And he's gone, is there a way to fill this gap? Can we just invest and see what happens? Because it'd be great to see Metal Hammer on the same shelf as Smash Hits or whatever the equivalent would have been it back then. And that's the gap, isn't it? That's where the innovation is.
Yeah.
Truly.
And bringing bands to the scene that were in a way acceptable for the real metalhead and for people that were curious to listen to something else than all the 90s Nirvana kind of music.
Yeah, it's an accessible.
Rather than the amount of people wanting to listen to metal, I think.
Yeah. Let's ask the big question then. And I've started going out of the gate with this question because everyone's got an opinion on it. So I know why Roadrunner is important, but why do you think it's important enough to have a documentary done about it? I guess
because they brought in all the bands I liked. I mean, the funny thing is that I'm old enough to be able to say I started listening to metal when it started in the beginning of the 80s, because I don't see Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin and all those bands from the 70s as metal. I mean, they stood up a little bit. It was getting a little louder, but then in the 80s it really started. And then I was like 11, 12. I started listening to first the Police, and then Van Halen, and then Van Halen turned quickly to Venom and all the bands I don't listen to anymore. But then, I mean, and all those bands I listened to in the beginning were, besides Metallica, of course, and all the other famous names, even now, were Roadrunner bands. So it was a matter of timing, picking out the best bands in all those small niches.
Yeah,
and they did everything.
How do you think they had the capability of picking the best bands?
The good A&R, I think.
Is it just super fucking lucky that Monty Connor just knows everything and has his ear to the ground?
I think he is I think in the end it all started with him. If they wouldn't have had him, I don't know what would have happened. It could have been a not recognizable label at all right now. So you need someone to not even to. I mean, I know a lot of A&R guys in Holland that are famous for tracking down just one big #1 hit, and then maybe 2 or 3 other bands, but that's it most of the times, because it's all of that is also. You don't really have to be able to have a capacity or something. You have to have good ears and you have to know a lot of people and know what the people want to hear.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, come on, he picked out so many as far as quality is concerned and songwriting. He picked out, I don't know if he might have, if you're a little bit, if you're kind to him, he could have had like a 100% score. Everything was a hit in the certain area the music was coming from.
I've heard him say his batting average, I can't remember the number he gave me. He said it was between 60 and 70%, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. to be fair to him. How did you feel about 2000s Roadrunner? Do you feel like they might have sort of sold out when they've onboarded like more accessible hard rock acts like your Theory of a Dead Man's, your Nickelbacks and things like that? Did you think the brand had been tarnished a little bit?
I kind of lost them back then. But on the end, I mean, bands like Amen and all the stuff were also from the 2000 era, I think. I don't even remember.
Late 90s, 2000.
Yeah. And Slipknot is 99, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, selling out. I mean, that's right. I mean, every company wants to get bigger. So there is a way of compromising.
I think it's in my sort of narrative that when Slipknot and Nickelback, because obviously it's really intense period because you've got those two bands, then you've got the IDJ buyout, the Universal buyout. I call it a buyout. They bought a share, a considerable share, and all these things happen in such like a small period of time. But the way I look at it is, then as a fork, you've got these AAA acts. These are the ones that are keeping the lights on. These are the platinum sellers. And it's just Nickelback and Slipknot. And then underneath that, we've still got this underground metal thing, which mostly like the Mike Gitters of the world and Monty Connor's looking after. And that continues in the same capacity as it always has done, except maybe there's a resourcing problem now because you've got the same number of people working in the office. Obviously, there's expansions and contractions and things. But when there's a Slipknot album cycle or when there's a Nickelback album cycle, the people who would normally be pushing these tiny underground bands are then called to action to push the Nickelback record. And maybe this is like my next sort of rabbit hole that I want to go down with people. I wonder if in the 2000s, that was the conflict. Not that the underground stuff had gone and that the metal credibility was gone, but the resources were now had to be all over the place.
Yes. And I think if a company gets successful, I mean, I can relate to it as far as comparing it to the TMF era. So like the TV station, we started with 6 people, ended up with 150.
Crazy.
Doing the same 24 hours of television.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't that like 20 times as much people were watching. We only got to like 1% of whole Holland, which is kind of funny for a TV station that just broadcast video clips. So it was still like a great thing to do, but it wasn't. And that's what happens with these kind of companies as well. I mean, I've been to the US office, I think it might have been over 20 years ago already. But there were a lot of people working there.
All black t-shirts and jeans.
Yeah, but a lot of people. And it doesn't help in as far as efficiency, like really building up relationships with large platforms, TV stations, etc. Because if you have a lot of people working, especially in the States, I had so many contacts with people that you meet on a Monday and then the next Monday they left the building already and somebody else has taken over.
Yeah.
So it has become kind of like a small company working as a major label, I think, and that doesn't really help in the end, although it helps to make a lot of money.
I think
and sell all the stuff to, what was it, Warner?
Yes, it was Warner in the end. I think the interesting thing there, though, is you had this expansion of people. You had these relationships that needed to be maintained, but a lot of the people who were there were lifers. So if you had, in your case, presumably a PR person, let's say it's Amy Sciaretto, because she did PR towards the latter part of her career at Roadrunner, she'd still be the point of contact. But if you couldn't speak to her for whatever reason, there's like 3 tiers down. There's a list of people who still represent her, who still maintain that relationship, which isn't as good as speaking to Amy herself or whoever your contact would be. But it's a damn sight better than having sort of like a revolving door. Like, let's say Amy's left the building one week and then it's someone else, and there's no continual relationship. And I think that's probably the difference. I'm just spitballing at this point because I'm trying to get into the second.
And as far as the Dutch part of Roadrunner is concerned, I mean, there was always someone to be connected to and to be helpful. So if I had a question about whatever. There was always someone helping out with a video, with whatever.
Yeah.
They were really proactively thinking with us, and not just one contact, but I think it was the product manager. It was Alain as well, Fahave as well. All those guys were just really, and it I mean, I see Alain more or less as a friend than a colleague to work with, because I only meet him once a year now, having dinner at home at some of our homes. So it kind of turned out to be I don't know what. It's fun, and I mean, it's also, and that's what everybody likes about metal. Whether you're wearing these kinds of clothes or black shirts or hoodeds or whatsoever, everybody thinks alike.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely.
You might not look alike, but you think alike. So it's a lot easier to work on a friendly basis, I think.
Oh, completely. And it's a lot easier to work on a friendly basis if the people who are friendly are still working there, as opposed to, as you say, you spoke to them on the Monday, they're gone by the Friday, which is, I understand, is one of the revolt. It's one of the natures of the major label system, to the point where I know Sepultura they were obviously with Roadrunner for a long time, and then I think for Chaos, I don't know if it was Chaos, I might be forgetting, but for one of their albums, it might even be Arise, they went to Epic for it because they thought, we want the major label treatment, we want the major label distribution. And there was a guy at Epic who was like, yes, everything we want for Sepultura, you're our guys. He was gone the next Monday, and they were like, there was nothing, the experience for them was nothing different from Roadrunner, except they knew everyone at Roadrunner.
Yep. Yeah, Sepultura, Jesus. I haven't seen that band playing for a long time.
Which era? The Derek Green era or the Max era?
I don't think I have ever seen Derek Green performing live, so that's 25 years ago.
Man, it was 25 years, wasn't it? That's when Roots came out.
96.
Yeah, that's that shit.
We did a recording of their show in like a 13,000 capacity venue, sold out in Rotterdam.
Right.
And then a couple of days later, they were gone.
Yeah. Was that one of the last gigs?
I think so.
Yeah. Trying to pin that. This is the problem with this project. I have to learn all these histories, and then when it comes to the details, when I have to recall it, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's what I was telling you last time. I mean, the funny thing of thinking about Roadrunner times, I mean, it's half of my life ago. So things keep popping up, and people are popping up.
Yeah.
Who's that guy? Who's that guy? And I started talking to some of the guys, which is also funny, because then they pop up with names. They go, oh, fuck yeah. I've totally forgotten them.
I feel bad because I've got a big list of people, a massive list of people to interview. The people who I consider to be like, all right, he was here for this period and this period, so he must understand this, the blah, 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 blah. And then if I haven't reached out to him and someone mentions him, I feel guilty. I don't know these people. I still feel like really guilty.
Yeah. It's a shitload of people that really worked with him, though.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, totally. I think at its biggest, Marcus Turner was telling me, I think at its biggest, it was about 250 people.
Yeah.
Which, if you think across like New York office, London office, Amsterdam office, German office, French office, there was some others. There's a Canadian office, which wasn't negligible. There's the Australian office, Japan, and there was a load of other satellite offices. Brazil. There's an Argentinian office for a while.
And then 250 doesn't even sound that much.
It doesn't. Which is crazy, really. Well, who's your favorite Roadrunner band then?
That's a difficult question. I would say the band that I saw playing live the most in Holland was Sepultura, because I saw all their shows.
Right.
Until 96. I started studying journalism in Tilburg, which had a really nice venue with, I think the capacity wasn't that big, like 1,000, 1,500 or something. And all the metal bands played over there. And my little room I lived in back then was just a couple of hundred yards from it. So I always took the bike and went to see everything. And I mean, I saw them all over there. And then after the show, you ate French fries 20 yards ahead from the venue with all the bands. But that, I think I don't know if I ever have a real favorite band, but if you look at the amount of time I spent with bands, the amount of interviews I did with Max and all the guys, I think it's either Corey Taylor or Max Cavalera, one of the two. But I think Corey Taylor is it's kind of funny as well because he's got 4 kids and then I've got 4 as well, so we always had fun about all those kids. But that's also been a long time because I kind of lost the appetite for Slipknot over the last years.
Right. I was going to say, how did you feel about Slipknot when they first came out? Because that was like, that was a bomb going off, wasn't it?
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it was in the end of my working area at the TMF time. And then I didn't even have to tell the guy that was doing all the video clips to do Wait and Bleed. He put it on the A list and played it the whole fucking day, which is kind of funny because it wasn't really the music we were playing in that time. But then, and that helped a lot of bringing Slipknot to everybody in Holland in just a couple of weeks.
Is that how it works then from a video perspective? There's an A list and a B list and a C list, and then the rotation of which you'll probably prioritize the A list and then work your way down.
And then you have a super clip that's been, I think it was played like every 2 hours. And the only metal
super clip. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I think we did Slipknot once and Korn Freak on a Leash as well.
Right. Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, all the other stuff didn't get that far. Yeah. But it was funny though. I mean, in the real beginning of the TV station, we only did like 8 hours and then a repetition of 8 hours 2 times, and then another new 8 hours and 8 hours and 8 hours. And the metal show was on Monday night between 10 and 12. But of course, if you do it on a repetition, you get it also at Tuesday daytime. And then once I was standing there with the owner of the TV station, we were watching this TV hanging on the wall. He was going like, "Oh, come on, fuck Frank." it's just because it's just 2 hours, but he hated it. He really hated it. The only thing you saw was just guys with long hair.
Hey man, but if 20,000 people are watching it, then 20,000
it was good enough. And the main issue was that I didn't want to be a program director of a TV station that was just a radio station with a picture
with moving images.
Yeah, because that was the original idea. So just do all these top 40 hits, and that's it. 24 hours a day. A couple of good-looking girls to host the shows. A couple of guys that also did did do the biggest radio station, and that's it. And then we brought in a show about alternative rock, metal, soul, and hip hop. So we had like 4 shows in a week, doing something different than all the same old music.
Right.
And I think in the beginning, Wet and Wild, which was the metal show, was like the most well-known show we did because it was so crazy.
Would you do it in Dutch or would it be in English?
Dutch, and then in the end it was English because of the last, I think 2 or 3 years there were bands hosting the show.
Oh, cool. Right.
Yeah, we couldn't. I mean, the guy that he's still one of the most famous radio DJs now in Holland, but he didn't want to do it anymore because it was too shitty to see him doing interviews with My Dying Bride and all the stuff, because you saw all the guys think after 2 minutes, Jesus fucking Christ, why am I here? And with television you can see it. You can't get it away.
Yeah, especially if you work in TV, you can read the body language, can't you? And just go, yeah.
I really didn't want to host a show on television. So we didn't. Well, we thought about getting someone in, but then in the end, it was a lot more fun to have all those either Roadrunner bands or Metallica or whatsoever. Everybody did it. It was pretty easy for them because they had to pick out 4 or 5 video clips, and the rest I would just put in.
Yeah.
And
you mentioned earlier that Headbangers Ball UK would be broadcast there as well. That was the thing. What I didn't know this. I didn't know Headbangers Ball UK had
Vanessa
that.
Warwick. The Vanessa Warwick thing was the Headbangers Ball UK, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And they I don't know when they started, but we didn't have MTV at the place I lived with my parents, but then a couple of cities further on, like 10 or 12 kilometers further on, they did have it. So I sometimes, most of the Sundays, I just took my bike to a friend of mine and watched Headbangers Ball. And I got all my I was writing for Or magazine.
Yeah.
All the new metal stuff I got from Headbangers Ball.
Right. Okay. I just didn't know it had that widespread. I knew it was a big deal in the US.
We didn't have any internet. That's the funny thing. When I started working at TMF, we didn't even have a website or email. I had the last year of working only with fax and phone. That's how old I am.
A simpler time though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everything's easy then.
Yeah, it was. But then I also remember that the ethics of working with email had to be learned by a lot of people.
Well, because everyone was just
a lot of fights between people because of misunderstanding and just using cap locks on that. So everybody thought, well, fuck, he's angry. No, he just by accident used his cap lock.
As if
funny.
And there's no etiquette.
No. No,
fair enough. No, I just had no idea that Headbangers Ball had the UK one had so much influence. I would have expected a Europe, especially like a German one. I would have expected a German Headbangers Ball.
No, no, we had an English one because we don't really like to listen to German people. I don't know I don't even think there was a German.
I'm not sure. No. The impact of Headbangers Ball isn't exactly something that was highlighted to me until I spoke to Rick Ernst the other week. Rick Ernst was like the head of video at Roadrunner in the latter years. Yeah. And he worked on Headbangers Ball, and he kind of made it clear that it was a big deal. And I was like, I hadn't even thought of that, because obviously I then have a lot of questions around. So how did Roadrunner leverage their relationship with Headbangers Ball? Because the thing you'd know about Roadrunner is everyone understands the brand, and it's always in everyone's faces. And obviously Headbangers Ball was a big part of that because all their bands are on there. So what's the relationship? How does it happen? Blah, 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 blah. And it just didn't occur to me until like 3 weeks ago to start asking questions like that.
I think they did. I think the way they treated us was exactly the same as they did with it should be the same as they did with Headbangers Ball England, because I mean, they got them to play every video they released.
It's probably worth it.
I mean, it wasn't that the music Roadrunner was releasing was bad. So it was really easy to play it.
Yeah, of course, there's that. But I think, and this is where my understanding falls back. But when you've got a programmer who's going, right, what videos are we going to play? There's presumably a external influencer who is going, well, Sony is offering us $5,000 if we play this guy, and this guy's offering us $6,000 if we play this guy, and somehow Roadrunner's got to have to bring something to the table, not necessarily monetary, but there's.
I had a lot of fights with some major labels because they thought that if they would buy some commercial airtime, we would automatically play videos, but we did it completely without any influence from the outside as far as money is concerned. We let them pay for cameras, etc., because without that money we couldn't even do the interviews.
Oh sure, yeah.
But it was also fun because I had a conversation with, I think it was the tour manager of Korn somewhere in New Orleans with Family Values tour. So just before they released Freak on a Leash and all those big hit songs, and he offered us to get along with them for a couple of days in a private airplane to do the promotion for this new album, blah 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 blah. If we would play those videos, and I was going like, no fucking way. First, I have to see it first before I promise you everything. And then we didn't do anything with this private plane or whatsoever. Because if you start with that, it kind of like
it'll start killing it because
pretty fast.
Because then your autonomy to figure out, what do people want to see, is going to be compromised, isn't it? Because
yep, which is probably pretty fast. It will probably turn out to get you like half of the amount of people watching, because it's going to be an annoying television show. If you get music that nobody likes, you will just turn it off. Same as radio.
Yeah. And this is the thing. I know I keep rolling it back to this big question as to why Roadrunner was so effective and so big. And it is because they had the acts. They also had the personal credibility, where they probably weren't dangling private airplanes in front of you. And there's a relationship management arm to the company which assisted or greased the wheels of all these things happening. So no wonder the brand was in your face every day, because it was easy for them to do, because they weren't having to overcome any management obstacles. They weren't having to overcome any cultural obstacles. We've got the acts and we've got the relationships. So let's just go and deliver the thing.
Yeah.
Makes everyone's day easier.
And I think the acts is 85% of everything.
Yeah.
And then a good marketing strategy is the rest, and a bit of luck, I think. But I don't know how much luck is involved.
This is what I'm trying to figure out, because I know it's predominantly the acts, but the acts are nothing without infrastructure.
No.
If Slipknot signed to fucking Sony, what would the world look like?
I don't know.
You know, it's
the amount of records sold might not have been enough.
If Sepultura stayed with the indie Brazilian label, what would have happened? Yeah, there's that 15% that's not the artist I think it is significant in terms of the platforming.
And then you should look at the A&R specifically, because if you listen to this first Sepultura album, I like it because it's funny, but it's completely nothing compared to Beneath the Remains.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Somebody changed. It can't be just Max Cavalera by himself that really changed the sound of the music.
No, it's a number of things. I mean, the Morrisound years are a force unto themselves, really. Did you vibe with death metal?
Yeah, in a way. And the funny thing is that I'm right now, over the last, it might have something to do with COVID, but I started listening to deathcore a lot more.
Oh, okay.
But the funny thing now is, because I still write for Aardschok Metal Hammer over here in Holland, under a different name than my own name, and I have to do all these bands. And if you listen to all these deathcore bands, there isn't, not a lot of them are really interesting.
No. There's so much great,
and the sound is always good, but then there are just a few. And I think the one band that also made me think of Roadrunner was Tala, because his singer is he's also on YouTube he doesn't really look metal at all. I still don't know exactly what it is, but he sounds a little bit like Mike Patton as well, because he has all these reaches and all this stuff. And he's just as crazy as well.
Yeah.
They might do something great over the next years, but that's it. All the rest. Talla, Tallah.
Have you not heard Venom Prison?
Yeah. I remember hearing them from, I don't know, some kind of an Apple playlist. And then I even think I did a review on an album 2 years ago. I think 1 or 2.
Something like that, yeah. I think they've done like an album a year for the last couple of years.
Yeah. There was some, at least they try to, those are bands that try to do something newish instead of just copying everything.
It's interesting because in 5 years, you'll probably forget 90% of those deathcore acts and only remember the ones that persevered. And that's the curse of like having your ears to the ground. You have to get through all the shit.
Yeah. And then I can't explain to you why I still like Die Artist Murder way better than all the other bands. I don't know. It's not that they really sound different. Or
yeah.
So it's a combination of marketing, CJ, the sound of the music, the live shows?
It's so the differences are really subtle, and I don't. Sometimes there's not words to describe them. This is why it's so subjective.
Yeah,
it's easy to say I like Slipknot because you go, oh, they're just 9 nut jobs in jumpsuits. And if you were back in 2000, you go, and they throw up before on stage before they go on, they're fucked up. It's crazy. There's a level of mystique you can attach yourself to, and that's what you were saying about like the art, the marketing arm, and the presentation of the act themselves is like,
yeah,
that's something you can describe and attach yourself to. But sometimes when it's just the music, you can't necessarily go, I like it because.
No, but that's
like it.
One of the reasons I keep listening to all these Apple playlists, metal playlists. They're not really renewed as much as I want to. Still, I keep listening to them because 1 out of 10 is a new band with a great song.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 aren't. Especially when Iron Maiden releases a new album, they put in 8 fucking songs in a row on this playlist. They go, come on.
Yeah. I've not heard the new Maiden yet. And I'm a massive Maiden fan, but
it's well, if you're a massive Maiden fan, either you were, I mean, it's gonna be good.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to it once or twice, and it was kind of good. But I'm not going to Maiden shows anymore.
I like the as they've gone into the post 2000s, they've just sort of got more and more jam band.
Yeah,
they've got more of a jam vibe. They've got the productions like more practice room. And it's like, well, you know what? I'll happily take a practice room production deliberately than, oh, what's the new Metallica album sounding like? Oh, it's as crisp as you can possibly fucking get it. It's like, okay.
Yeah, but Metallica is also a band that if you started listening to them in the 80s, you stop listening to it after 91.
Yes.
Totally. I always give it a try. And every album I go, and Hardwire was kind of good. Apparently not good enough to listen to it more than 2 or 3 times.
What about Slayer then? Because Slayer kept a consistency.
Yeah, but I didn't like Slayer when they were around, and then the last 10 years or something, I went to more shows and actually started to like them when I was 35 or 40. Which happened with a lot more bands like Obituary and all the stuff. I didn't dig it at all
right.
in the 80s, 90s, whenever. And then right now I would go to any kind of a concert of them because it's always good for about an hour.
When they first came out, like Obituary and all these early Florida death metal bands, because this is in my head canon, this is where Roadrunner first started getting their traction.
Yeah.
Because obviously they had Merciful Fate, they had Crimson Glory, they had King Diamond, they had all these cool bands that were doing cool things. But in terms of like a label trying to trend set, it is Deicide.
Yeah.
It is Obituary. It's all that Florida death metal stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out from people who were there at the time, was it because it was like so fringe and so extreme that people drew to it? Or was it because it's like, this is actually really fucking cool and it's really fucking that? Was there an accessibility which I'm not seeing? Do you know what I mean? Because like when you say when they first came out, I didn't like it. I was like, I bet that was the experience for a load of people, but Roadrunner still stuck with it, and that's interesting to me.
There was I also know a lot of guys about my age that can still do like all the lines, just 100% correct. So there are a lot of real fans back then, but I don't know. It took me a little time.
Yeah. Well, these are the things I need to unlock, and maybe Scott Burns can help me with that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
In terms of like my own questions, I've got nothing else. Is there any kind of rabbit holes you want to jump down, or any stories that you might have occurred to you in the last few weeks since we last spoke?
No, I mean, one of the funniest stories is the fact that they Roadrunner had a free beer bar backstage at the Dynamo Festival, which I still have photos of the Meshuggah guys being as drunk as fuck, and I don't know, Dimmy Borg here, all those guys, everybody was drinking their asses off over there, but it was too funny. So that's a way of, they were smart enough to be everywhere you had to be as a metal label. And they were just, I mean, everybody loved them, so everybody was over there drinking beer.
If it's a free bar, everyone's going to go to the free bar.
For 3 days in a row.